attachment is lotus feet, the perfection that fulfills. From him ecstatic prey emanate, combining his is destroyed. The baby was, give us the shade of your lotus feet. Your fame is spread.
Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. All glories to the Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. All glories to Srila Prabhupada ki jai. All glories to the assembled devotees.
Hare Krishna.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Narayanam Namaskritya
Narayanam Namaskritya
Naram Chaiva Narottamam
Naram Chaiva Narottamam
Devim Saraswatim Vyasam
Devim Saraswatim Vyasam
To Jayam Udiriye.
Tato Jayamudiraye.
Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, we should first offer our respectful obeisances to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Narayan, to Narayan Rishi, the supremmost human being, Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, to Srila Vyasadeva, the author, and to Srila Prabhupada, our spiritual master. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namaste. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharani Nivasesha Sunyavadi. I just have one quick question about, do you have the new calendar yet?
I keep forgetting to go online and
Because it says that this Wednesday is Ramachandra's appearance day.
No, next one.
This coming Wednesday, a week from today.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I know it's in that neighborhood. I'm just going by the BBT calendar right now.
Okay, well, that's what it
But
is.
if somebody reminds me during the day, and hopefully I'll be by my computer and have a little time to.
Localized calendar is on the website.
It's what?
The localized calendar is on the website.
Do you remember?
Oh, it's on our website.
Is that the same? Is the I'm knowing the same? Is it on
I haven't checked it. I'll check it now.
If it's the localized one, it should be. You need to just print it out and put one in.
So I'm just going to read, since it's already 10 minutes to 8.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I'll just read the Sanskrit and we can do the word for word. Sonu pravishto bhagavans. Is that it? Pravishto Chetas rupena tam ganam. Is this the right verse? Yeah. Vinam samyojayam asa. Suptam karma prabodhayan. So the word for word is sa. that. Anupravishta, thus entering later on. Bhagavan, the personality of Godhead. Chesta Rupena, by his representation of a tent. Kali. Yeah, I don't know what that, something, that might be a grammatic or something wrong. So, Tam, them. Ganam, all the living entities, including the demigods. Vinam, separately. Samyojayam, engaged to work. Suptam, sleepy. Karma, work. Prabodhayan, enlightening. So the translation is, thus when the personality of Godhead entered into the elements of his energy, all the living entities were enlivened into different activities, just as when one is engaged in his work after awakening from sleep. So please repeat. Thus when the personality of Godhead, just when the Supreme Personality of Godhead, entered into the elements, by his energy, all the living entities, were enlivened into different activities. Just as one is engaged, in his work after awakening from sleep. The purport by His Divine Grace, Sri Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Every individual soul remains unconscious after the dissolution of the creation, and thus enters into the Lord with his material energy. And that would, from what I would understand, that would mean the subtle body that's covering the soul. The subtle body stays with him. So that's the material energy that is entering in. Or else it means the elements of the material universe as well. These individual living entities are conditioned souls everlastingly, but in each and every material creation, they are given a chance to liberate themselves and become free souls. They are all given a chance to take advantage of the Vedic wisdom and find out what is their relationship with the Supreme Lord, how they can be liberated, and what the ultimate profit is in such liberation. By properly studying the Vedas, one becomes conscious of his position and thus takes to the transcendental devotional service of the Lord and is gradually promoted to the spiritual sky. In other words, what's in it for me? Why should I take this up? Everybody has that feeling, sense. What am I going to get out of this? Well, you're eternally associated with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That's what's in it for you. The individual souls in the material world is engaged in different activities according to their past unfinished desires. After the dissolution of a particular body, the individual soul forgets everything. But the all-merciful Lord, who is situated in everyone's heart as the witness, the super soul Lord, who is situated in everyone's heart as the witness, the super soul awakens him and reminds him of his past desires. And thus he begins to act accordingly in his next life. This unseen guidance is described as fate, and a sensible man can understand that this continues his material bondage in the three molds of nature. The unconscious sleeping stage of the living entity, just after the partial or total dissolution of the creation, is wrongly accepted as the final stage of life by some less intelligent philosophers. after the dissolution of the partial material body, a living entity remains unconscious for only a few months. In other words, when we pass, like from lifetime to lifetime. After the total dissolution of the material creation, he remains unconscious for many millions of years. But I'm going to say something. But when the creation is again revived, he is awakened to his work by the Lord. The living entity is eternal, and the wakeful state of his consciousness, manifested by activities, is his natural condition of life. He cannot stop acting while awake, and thus he acts according to his diverse desires. When his desires are trained in the transcendental service of the Lord, his life becomes perfect, and he is promoted to the spiritual sky to enjoy eternal awakened life. So the verse again is, thus when the personality of God entered into the elements by his energy, all the living entities were enlivened into different activities, just as one is engaged in his work after awakening from sleep. So, there's a couple of things right off, and it just popped in my head while I'm reading it, the purport. This says here, the unseen guidance is described as fate. I just, for some reason, it popped in my mind, the movie Pinocchio, and there's a song in it where, remember Jiminy Cricket?
Yeah.
He had a song that said, let your conscience be your guide. And there would be the little devil over here and the little angel over there. I don't remember how it went, but the way sometimes Christians or the West describes this whispering in our minds is our conscience. And some people say, well, that's just, you've been, the society has, in a sense, inculcated these values into you, and they may not be, the certain moralities and so on. But actually, according to even, like say, Christianity, the Bible, they have these laws. Like, thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not commit adultery, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not bear false witness, thou shalt have one God and worship him, thou shalt honor their mother and father, you should observe the Sabbath. I don't know if that was all of them or not, but don't lie. I don't know if I said that. But all of those are things that and that's inculcated into us by our parents and by our society. And of course, in the secular state, there's different views on this. And when I was just starting out in grade school, there was a prayer time, and we used to pledge allegiance to the flag, one nation under which it stands. And somewhere in there, God was mentioned. So then one person, an atheist, sued all of the educational systems, saying that was offensive to their belief, which is there is no God. So because of that one person, we stopped having prayer and stopped having under God. But not everybody abided by that, depending on the region of the country you lived in. And I think now they have a moment of silence or something like that. So, I remember in God We Trust days, used to use the expression like, well, anybody who's religious or wants to bring religion more into our lives, then that's that's okay. We understand you have good beliefs, but just sort of like, can you just keep it over there on Sunday? Like over there in the back of the bus. That was the expression we used. Because, somehow or other it seemed inconvenient. And then simultaneously, on Sunday, that's when they have the best sporting events and, things like that. So your mind is not fully engaged. So the one day that's set aside for worship is
I know you probably don't want to get into a discussion about it, but one of the reasons for doing that is because you always had the majority Protestant population always making the Jewish kids and the Catholic kids, feel somewhat intimidated.
You had that? Because here, I mean, where I grew up, the Christians were practically all Catholics. The minority was, there were no Baptists. There was a couple of what they call Protestants or Methodists, Episcopalians, maybe a Lutheran or two,
Mm-hmm.
and then a lot of Jews.
Mm-hmm.
And we worked those things out. But the Christians didn't appreciate the, what is his name, Billy Graham style of preaching.
Mm-hmm.
They're much more reserved. That was my experience. And so you're saying down in the South it was more aggressive?
Well, yeah, but not necessarily in the New Orleans area because you have a majority Catholic population.
And you don't have
you had lots of Baptists, and they were always trying to convert the Catholic kids.
Yeah.
And there wasn't a lot of Jewish population when I grew up in that area.
Well, where I lived it was about 60-40 Jewish to Christian or something like that. Oh yeah. Maybe even a little more,
That long?
Huh?
Where were you at?
I was on the South Shore of Long Island, very close to New York City, about 20-25 miles. A place called Oceanside. If you look at Long Island, you'll see there's right at the bottom of the southern part, right under it, there's a little sandbar. That sandbar is Long Beach, and you take a bridge over it, and that's Oceanside. So, and I was actually born a little bit closer in the city, called Rockaway, right on and the hospital was right across the street from the ocean. So I was born on the shore of the Atlantic Ocean, which apparently is one of the sacred rivers. When that story is told, and when Krishna calls all the sacred waters, first he calls the oceans. It has to do with when the Ganga came down. I don't really know the whole story. So, and there's a lot of devotees who were born in that area, actually. But then the other one that I was thinking about when I first read it, which was not what I initially liked talking about. Where is it? Unconscious. After the dissolution, the material body remains unconscious. Total dissolution. Oh yeah, it says millions of years. I mean, okay, Lord Brahma, his life is 100 of his years, which is trillions of our years. But his death is this, it's saying here, millions of our years, but it's actually trillions of our years. Trillions. But the other, what I was wondering about when I read this is, does the same Lord Brahma come out, or is there a new Lord Brahma coming out?
It's the same Lord Brahma until the Mahavishnu Vishnu breathes in the universes. I mean, Brahma takes...
this is after the dissolution of the universe.
I don't know what it's referring to, if it's the partial devastation or not, because
No, it's not.
It's the night that comes.
This is the night.
Yeah, so the night Brahma...
No, it's not the night. It said partial and total, and this is the total.
Okay, yeah, well, total, and there's a new Brahma, and there's a new universe.
Right. And so then, when you come out, it says you're awakened to your past desires. I mean, and you can... at least for myself, speaking for myself, there was certain things that I was repulsed by, that my family thought were quite acceptable. And everybody thought that was like I didn't really belong, that maybe my mother had an affair or something, because I didn't go along with, I hated the smell of coffee, I hated the way they cooked breakfast, the eggs and all that. And there were certain meats I really were repulsed by, especially cold cuts, but I hated that, And I don't think I'm unusual amongst devotees. I think a lot of devotees had that experience. I remember hearing that one girl being interviewed in Australia, and her mother and her aunt was standing there, and she always said, when I was growing up, I always felt like I was from another planet. I didn't belong to this family.
Yeah.
You know, so, yeah, go ahead.
What comes to my mind with that one was, at first they were real concerned about,
Yeah,
is she gonna be okay, how she gonna get her education, is she gonna be financially okay? And then I heard another remembrance later on, and how the same lady was saying how she's proud of her
Yeah.
daughter now.
And
she's
her-
a Hare Krishna, and she has all these wonderful Hare Krishna
Grandchildren.
grandchildren that are just as, you know,
yeah. She
blessed.
You can make up for a lot of misdemeanors and felonies with your parents if you have some grandchildren. My parents, they flew all the way down to Atlanta, yeah, which was pretty amazing. So, and this feeling of when you first wake up, I had an experience. I think it's indicated when you first wake up. Sometimes you don't actually recognize where you are, and one experience I had as when I was traveling around selling paintings for either Touchstone or Sterling. I'd be gone for a long time and staying in a different motel every night. And I remember one morning specifically, I woke up and I'm looking around the room, and we'd only been in this place. It's those townhouses on Telly Road. They had just built them. We were the first ones to move in. And that, that used to be behind the Blockbuster and the Winn-Dixie. Well, so yeah, we were the first to move in there, real nice. And I woke up and I'm going, which motel is this? I couldn't recognize it. I thought it was one of the motels, and I realized, oh, it's the new place we moved into. So, how do we turn that off? Do we know?
Go back.
Okay, thank you. So that's an experience that you can relate to. But in some cases, when we're waking up into a prison house, and the whole idea here is it says this is our opportunity to finally become liberated become free from the chains of this material existence. But yet, Super Soul is reminding you of all of your desires. He doesn't distinguish. He gives you the opportunity to enact all of them, and it's up to you to have, to make the choices. And sometimes that this isn't the right path to go, and based on depending on the family. This is like, in psychology they have a discussion, one's Gestalt and one is, I forget the other one, what it's called. But one is based on that the reason why certain people turned out the way they do is based on the environment they grew up in. Their parents, their teachers, their friends. And the other one has to do with your genetic makeup, your biology. But I think it's a combination of both, myself. And actually, we did have, our teachings from Lord Jesus Christ, and other moral teachings that were, imbued in us. Even, within our government has a certain sense of morality to it. And, but we didn't really know the consequences. You're going to go to hell. I mean, actually in the Christian faith, if you think about it, it's linear. Their explanation of our lives is linear. It's either this life, you either make it, or you're in hell for eternity. Whereas in the Vedic philosophy, approach towards life, it's circular. It's cyclic. So there is no end. You can keep going and keep improving or keep degrading yourself. And that is your free will. But the Shastras are there, Guru, Shastra, Sadhu, and thank goodness for Srila Prabhupada, because he gave us the real deal to understand what are the real consequences? I mean, you just didn't even think about, the barbecue on Saturday, eating a hamburger. Just what everybody does. 4th of July, you go and have a barbecue. I never cared for the hot dogs myself, but I hated them as a matter of fact. But that was just the way we lived. And even if you look at old, on some stations, I haven't seen them in years, but they'll play like old TV shows, like old game shows. And you see the people sitting there, and they're smoking cigarettes right in the middle of the show.
Really, I don't.
Yeah, you look, if you look, I think it's called TV Land or something like that. I don't know if they play like old, different kinds of, I don't know about dating it, but different kinds of game shows. And there'll be the people that are, doing and they're usually, minor league celebrities, and they're sitting there, even on Johnny Carson's show, he'd be sitting there smoking a cigarette.
I guess it was really tough on the ashtray industry, huh?
Dry cleaning too, because your clothes, it's hard to get that smell out.
Oh, yeah, that's right. So that's how they got it out with dry cleaning. Huh?
Sure. And
I
also,
didn't realize that.
and also the whole cancer industry. I mean, that's a whole business. I mean, not to minimize the work that these researchers are doing, but there is, they're always coming up with new theories. And if you can come up with a theory, you can get funding for your approach towards the cure. And there's really it's a gamble. So they're all, they were all affected. I remember flying to our first flight to India in 1975, my first flight, and that was the first time we had a full plane of devotees. Almost. We almost had a full plane. In 77 it was all. I think maybe 76 too, but 77 I was on the first one that landed in Dum Dum Airport, and that was a big event. The mayor was there, and it was all devotees the whole way. And I think they may have done that because on the 75 flight, all of a sudden, you hear a different voice other than the pilot or the stewardess. You hear His Holiness Hridayananda Maharaj gets on the loudspeaker and starts, says, excuse me, if you noticed, most of us on this flight are non-smokers, and the smokers are in the minority. We would just ask you if you could just restrain. I know there's a smoking section, but it really the smoke just comes right into our section. Could you just restrain from smoking just for a few hours? Can't you control yourself? And all of the voices go, oh my God. And then, of course, they started smoking more. But since that point, how it's changed our society. I mean, smoking is like not only not in that kind of situation, it was even taken out of restaurants and bars. Yeah. And then people would go outside the office building, and then they said, no, as soon as we walk out, we got to smell it. We got to go around the corner or something, or down the alley.
20 feet.
Yeah, 20 feet. Okay, so it's really tough to be. And then even they said if you have a child in the car, your own car, you can't smoke in it. So, whatever. The devotees definitely had some influence on it. I know there was always an anti-smoking campaign, but it really was, because they knew it had caused cancer for a long time. Mm-hmm. But they were there. I not so long ago, I saw on the YouTube, I saw an old I Love Lucy show, just for a few seconds, and a commercial. I think I was just watching old commercials, and it was either Desi, the husband, or Lucy, and they're doing an advertisement for smoking, saying that 9 out of 10 doctors says that this is very good for your health. It actually helps you relax.
Really?
Oh yeah, there's many benefits to it, and that was like in the 50s. So but our movement has had that kind of effect so that we can make the right decisions. No one thought, when we say be a good person, but what is a good person? Does a good person, yes, you feed the hungry, but do you feed them, dead carcasses? I mean, do you feed them meat? Or do you try to provide them vegetarian offer to the Lord food? What is a good person? What is real charity? How can you be a good person? I mean, so this movement gives us real information so that we don't have to go back and just imagine it's the potential that we may have gone through this cycle. Not only of birth and death, just in a day of Brahma, or even in the lifetime of Brahma, but then we go into the dissolution, go within the body of Vishnu, come back out, and it starts all over again. But the subtle body always stays with us. It never leaves us. The subtle body is practically eternal, as long as we're there. And I came up with an analogy, I think I've used it before, but up in Tennessee, I don't think there's any black walnuts here, but black walnuts grow everywhere. They're almost like bamboos over there.
Wow.
And the walnut is a very interesting nut.
So they like the English walnuts?
No. And it has two coverings. The first covering, which will be in this analogy, will be our material body, the body, earth, water, fire, air. And the inner shell is the subtle body. So the outside is sort of a limey green color, and you can just go like this, and it's like a rotten peach or something. It just falls apart, just comes right off, stains your hand a little bit. You can easily just take it off. It's thick, it looks large, but you think, oh, there, I'm down to the nut. That's just the beginning. Now you're at the shell that's protecting the nut. And you can't just use the nutcracker. You have to take it. I remember doing this on a Thanksgiving not too long ago. And I had to put it on a concrete step, with a hammer. And you just whack, nothing. You gotta just whack. And then finally it starts to crack. And then you have to pick out the little pieces of nut. Maybe you can even get one that comes out whole. It's a very small one. That's the soul in this analogy.
And the black walnut is like that?
That's the black walnut, yeah.
We have,
Where are they?
just in our yard, we have some planted over by the shop because we use it for medicine. Somebody gave, I don't have it anymore, but somebody gave me this way to make a tincture, and supposedly very, very valuable. I think it was for the liver or something like that. I can't remember. It's really good for parasites.
Parasites too. And he wrote out all the directions on how to make this tincture, and I don't remember what I did with it. But and he says it sells for like $80 an ounce in some places. It's very desirable, but also the wood. So, but they're actually very tasty. And you can make you put it in breads or something like that. But to get to it, you gotta really. And so that's the point. This body is very fragile. It can be crushed in an airplane or car. It can fall off a ladder. Anything little. We're thinking about the dissolution of our civilization. It's going to be a bomb. It's many bombs. It's going to be a war. It's going to be natural disasters and earthquakes and volcanoes. And it turns out it's a microscopic virus. Is affecting our civilization more than anything else. I mean, I'm not saying it's completely destroyed it, but it's definitely changing. And what will be the result over the next few years remains to be seen. But there's definitely a movement away from the cities, like Prabhupada said, and people are more interested in being in the country, but they haven't completely given up on their Western technology and so on. So, but Prabhupada said this would happen, and then I always thought it meant something more dramatic, and that still may be. But it started with a little microscopic, not visible to our eye, virus. So Krishna is so intelligent. He's so powerful. We're thinking we're so strong. This huge American, Western civilization and our technology. And we're brought to our knees by something we can't even see. And we don't know what it is. We don't know how to stop it. We don't know how to cure it. Eventually they'll figure it out probably. Krishna will give them intelligence. So does anyone have anything they'd like to add in my ramblings?
I was thinking of an example, so the memory is evaporate, and about the living entity and how, and the